You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Ed Coambs. How knowing your attachment style can stop money issues from damaging your relationships. Ladies, welcome. I am so jazzed about today's guest because, first of all, I told him he looks like my new celebrity country crush. I don't even know the actor's actual name, but he plays this guy, Luke Wheeler, on my new favorite obsession, Nashville. And also, he is what you could dream of sitting down and talking about money and men to one guy. This guy, Ed Coambs, is the man because he helps couples deal with their money shit. And he's super smart. He's got an MBA. He's got an MA. He's got all these like 3 letters after his name. He is actually recognized as a thought leader in financial therapy. He's been cited in the Wall Street Journal, the AP, Times, CNBC. He leads couples through therapy from financial despair and frustration into financial intimacy and connection. And like us, he's all about brain science. He is the founder of healthyloveandmoney.com. And I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Marni. I'm so excited to be here and to be able to share what I can for your audience.
Well, one thing that I think is just why I really get excited about this is because when I was married to my first husband, he had a ton of money and, you know, like the credit cards and the nanny and, you know, all this stuff that I thought that I wanted. He was super irresponsible with his money. So in the end, when we got divorced, like there wasn't much left to give. And luckily he took all his debt with him. But when I was dating again, I just had this realization, like, that's not what I really want. You know, like I thought that I wanted like the guy who had like the big career and, you know, all of these things. And so when I met my husband, who I've been with for 12 years, totally different story. And what I'm so excited to talk to you about is doesn't mean like it's perfect either.
Sure.
Right? Because on the flip side of that, there's like, oh, but wait. So I think that there is no perfect dude and that this issue is just going to be at the heart of whatever it is that you do when you create a life together. So give me some stats. Like I know that like, you know, money and death or something are probably the biggest, you know, struggles that cause divorce. But like what do you know about all of this?
Yeah. So there's some very clear empirical research that money conflict is not equal to other types of conflict, that the research shows, and Dr. Britt Luder and Dr. Christy Archuleta have done a lot of pioneering research in this area to try to measure money conflict relative to just other conflicts and the adverse impact of money conflict. Yes, not all fights are equal. Money fights are more damaging to the relationship health. And part of understanding that is the meaning of money is so significant and multifaceted for people because it represents security, safety, freedom, flexibility, power, control, right? So money can take on any meaning you give it, and it's multifaceted. And so that's part of what makes it so powerful when we're in conflict about it, because when we're in conflict, we're not always in conflict about the same meaning around money. We can shift. Like sometimes it's about feeling safe. Sometimes it's about feeling control. Sometimes it's about freedom. Sometimes it's about creativity. Sometimes it's about connection. And so we use money for so many purposes, psychologically speaking, that's what makes it such a loaded topic.
I think the other thing that's so interesting is that, and this is like, you know, people will jump into bed with someone, but then they don't want to talk about sex or, you know, your STDs, you know, because it's like a scary topic. Right. And I think money is the same way too, right? Like I'll put the ding dang in the wing wing, but I don't want to talk about like, do you have debt or, are you a spender or a saver or, any of those conversations? Because I think they feel awkward and uncomfortable. So, I mean, before someone even like commits, do you recommend that at some point you have kinds of these conversations and how do you do it in a way that's sexy, fun, and flirty?
Oh, that's a really great question. I love it. And it's one that I work on with my clients in my office often. And I was doing another presentation yesterday. Someone asked me, well, when in the dating relationship is it appropriate to start really talking about money? And I said, the first date.
Awesome. I love that. So how do you do it?
Well, because right in the first date, built into it already, you have inherently, most first dates, there will be some financial transaction there.
Yes.
Right. So that's the practical side, but it's also where do we go on our first date? What meaning do we give to that? Is it a nice enough restaurant, park, theater, whatever that is, right? We're making evaluations about the status or the meaning of where we're being taken or not taken. What type of car does this person show up in or not show up in? What type of clothes are they wearing? How well kept are they? Right? These are all appraisals that we're making consciously and unconsciously as well. And those are all money representatives.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, I had a client once she came to a call. She was like, can you believe this guy wants to meet me on our first date at Starbucks? Like that, like zero creativity. Like how cheap can you be? Anyway. And it turns out, so I can't remember exactly how it went down, but basically she communicated something about like, maybe trying something different. I can tell you, I did not approve of that. But the bottom line is the guy was like, oh yeah, it's super boring. But like and she lived in San Francisco, I think. And he was like, ugh, I know you have to rush, we're trying to do it after work. And I just picked some place that you said was close to your office because I was trying to like make it easy for you. He's like, but I'm super happy to go someplace cooler for sure, And that's the thing, right? She made up all this shit. Like the guy's not creative. He doesn't have any money. He doesn't care. I'm not important because he picked Starbucks for the first date.
And that's really one of the most valuable money lessons that we can learn is we all create explanation and meaning around what people are doing and their money motives. But the bigger step is to be able to question that and figure out what's really on the other side here. And so I like to teach a lot about financial empathy, and financial empathy, a big part of that is leading with curiosity.
What does that even mean? Financial empathy.
Yeah. So financial empathy, right? Empathy is about being able to feel the other person's feelings and understand them as from that other person's perspective, not from your own perspective and how you feel about it, but how they feel about the situation. So financial empathy then is about in money conversations and money setups. Why is this person showing up the way they are with their money? Why are they doing it that way? What is likely in their backstory that's led them to show up and organize around money the way that they have? Because we all have a very personal relationship with money, and we have a long stream of experiences related to money or its absence that sets us up for the way that we show up around it and what we then think is the right way to do money. And the truth is we all have to feel some sense of we're doing money the right way. Otherwise we're out of alignment. And that psychologically is a big problem.
That's so interesting. I'm thinking about, of course, I'm making it about me, but I'm just thinking when I met my husband, we were both broke ass. But we bonded over our broke assness. Do you know what I mean? We're like, let's go split a salad and a glass of water, because I hadn't really started my business. And it was really interesting because, and this is why I would love to talk about how you grow together as a couple when you have different money stories and money histories. Because what happened is I started doing all this work on abundance and like figuring out my money and wanting to get away from that identity as like, being broke and needing help and all these things. And I remember at the beginning, like it was really a struggle between us because I was like, wanted to move away from that identity for me and as a couple. And so how do you start to like assess where you are in these in these narratives so that you can kind of grow together? What do people do to make sure that they connect?
Yeah, so one of the things that I like to do is to start with trying to start gathering financial history. One of the exercises that I'll use in my practice and in my own teachings is just to take 3 minutes to brainstorm as many different money memories as you can. And I want people to go all the way back to their childhood, as far back as they can, and start there and just let the gears bring up whatever comes up. Right? No judgment, good, bad, otherwise, just see what comes up. Once you spend 3 or 4 minutes doing that, stop. And many people find it helpful to have some sort of list of emotions.
Right.
And then you take the list of emotions and you start looking at each money memory and saying, what emotions are there? Wow. If there's no emotional word, and you put it in there. And oftentimes you'll find I may feel sad and angry and grateful. All like, we don't always just feel one way about an experience. But what you do is you take that time to transfer the emotional words to each of these money memories. Now that gives you a decent little blueprint into why you experience money the way that you did. You're raising your financial consciousness. And most times when people, especially like you're trying to make that transition to abundance,
right,
but it's really from a place of fear, scarcity, shame, hurt, anger, and resentment. And those don't die easily.
Yeah, they don't die easily. I mean, do they ever die?
No. I was in my own therapy yesterday, and I was talking with my therapist, and I said, well, I hit the money shame spiral. And she was like, I hate to tell you, you're going to go back there too. Like, money shame doesn't ever end. It's more what you do when you recognize you're in it. And how do you come out of it? Right. So that's really, we're not trying to avoid experiencing any emotional state. We're trying to learn how to recognize when we're in different emotional states and what we need to do to get back onto balance.
So, because I'm thinking like my early memories are like, my dad was sort of like raised me up to be like resourceful. I had like, 3 jobs in college to like, pay for shit, even though he probably could have helped me out a lot. I mean, a lot of those kinds of things. Whereas my husband was sort of like the kid, he grew up in Singapore, an expat, living on, like at the country club where the company paid for everything and putting stuff on the tab and all of those sorts of things. So now you're saying this and I'm like, oh my God, that's so, like, I don't even know what to make of it, but like I could start even like doing that exercise and really get some more insight, because if what you say is true, that they never really go away, it's how you manage it, then it's more like what I hear you saying is like not trying to change somebody necessarily, but like, how do you work with it? Is that kind of like the goal for couples?
That's the big goal with couples, is change actually grows out of acceptance and understanding. And so we get the order of operations wrong. Right? We try to change them and then we'll feel compassionate towards them. So it's conditional on like you changing, then I'll feel positive towards you. But it's like what the science helps us know is it's not until we feel accepted and safe and seen that we can actually consider changing and letting down our defenses and guards.
That's so brilliant, because I think that when you must see couples and they're fighting about it, right? So if they're fighting about money, then how can you create change? It's like a vicious cycle, right? Because it's like, you're a jerk. Why did you do that? Why won't you change? I mean, right. That doesn't set somebody up for...
No, that doesn't make me say, oh yeah, thanks for calling me a jerk. Now I'm really ready to change. It makes me say, oh yeah, I'll show you a jerk. Here's my middle fingers. Let's go. And it creates more and more reactivity, and couples spiral further and further out of control. And so this is why it's so important to start with financial empathy and financial history, and trying to work as hard as you can to understanding the meaning behind those experiences and why you responded and felt the way you did. And your partner is not going to fully know or be connected to that. That's okay. That's part of what makes this a journey together. And to be honest, this is also where reading self-help books, financial books, to start to get that bigger perspective about how other people have given meaning to similar experiences. It'll help you start to say, maybe I felt that way. So that's that curiosity is, if you don't really know the meaning, or you need to flex and see, maybe there's another meaning that I give to this. And so you alluded to, like, well, my dad made me work 3 jobs and he probably had the money. Well, I don't know what that would brought up for you, but I almost would imagine some resentment and anger.
Oh, yeah, totally. And so I'm like, so there's a point where my husband, and I made more money than him ultimately. And so we were raising kids together. And so at the end, it was like, this is stupid. He was in TV, which is like a nightmare schedule. And we were like, you should be available to help with the kids in the house, right? And that's a better financial decision. But Ed, the minute I'd be like, you know, I'm working those 3 jobs, you know what I mean? That was like always my go-to, even though I freaking chose it. Oh my God. You have to. So I'm going to send you, I wrote a whole essay about it that was in the LA Times about how when I became an empty nester, I tried to basically get my husband to change because I just didn't want to deal with like the truth about being an empty nester, right? Trying to change him to who he is. And I brought up this money shit that was literally like so put to bed, because for me, that's where I go to when I need to feel in control. Right. I'm like basically getting therapy here right now. But I think that this is shit that people don't realize is because do you feel like this stuff comes up that's not even a conversation about, like, you know, did you buy all this stuff on Amazon? Do these things money things leak into other conversations?
Oh yeah, all the time. It impacts everything. I was recently working with a couple where, they were really locked in this rigid pattern of where she would overspend, do it secretively. He would find out, and then she would promise to be better, and she would be better for, 6 months, a year, and then right back to the same pattern. And so there was so much mistrust that was building up into their relationship, adversely impacted their sexual intimacy. It impacted the way that they parented their kids. And so as we've dug deep on the money piece and built that financial empathy, worked on the financial history and making more meaning out of why is your partner showing up the way they are around the finances, the compassion started to show back up in the relationship. Oh, you mean, because for both of them, they had pretty profound pain around money and relationships, which so many of us do. Right? Money alone doesn't cause us pain. It's the relational meanings associated and experiences with it. That's where the pain comes from. Mom not understanding what I needed, dad not understanding what I needed, dad being overly focused on the job and not on me, what have you. I had a client recently tell me I was going through a divorce. My parents were going through a divorce. I was so sad. I was wearing black all the time. And my mom bought me a red shirt to try to make me happy. Instead of seeing me in my sadness. Right. So, right. We use money in all kinds of different ways around all kinds of relationship processes. And most of us have layers of conflict around money, relationships, and meaning.
You know, what's interesting is we have what we call on our campus non-negotiable. So, when we work with someone, we help them kind of figure out what their 5 deal breakers are, and they're about values, not characteristics. And typically, there's some financial non-negotiable that comes up. And when they explain to me, their story around that, it's typically coming from something like, well, my ex-husband or my former boyfriend, stole my money, or, didn't work and I had to do da-da-da-da, or I'm tired of working. I just want someone who's like more wealthy than me so I can finally chill, right? And so they're making like this money thing part of their criteria. And when I hear you talk about all the crap that's embedded in that, it makes me go, it's pretty important to unpack that before you start like eliminating people based on these criterion that you come up with.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big piece is we all have these money histories that we've lived through, and we didn't choose most of our early money situations. We were born into them. So whether you ended up born into poverty or born into exceptional wealth or anywhere in between, none of us chose our starting financial life. But that starting financial point left very indelible impressions that will be with us through the whole course of our life. And if we don't start to reconcile and deal with what that's meant for us and what we benefited from and what we lost in light of that, and there are benefits and losses at every place on the economic spectrum. No one's immune. No one has it perfect. So, you mentioned I have the MBA, right? That's what I love, like the SWOT analysis. Some of your listeners.
Yes, love me a SWOT.
So, do the financial SWOT analysis on your life. Right? What were the strengths and weaknesses internally within your family around the finances? And what were the external environmental opportunities and threats? And no matter where you're at in the economic spectrum, you can fill all four quadrants.
That's freaking amazing. So let me ask you this. So I know that you talk about attachment style being an important part of your money health. Why is that important, and what do we need to do with that?
Okay, so Marni, are you familiar with attachment theory?
Oh, of course. Everyone, people come, they come to me and they're like, I'm a this, it's like, I have blonde hair, and they'll say like, and I'm an anxious avoidant attachment person.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I'll share this funny story with your crew. If you're new on the attachment journey, you're okay. When I first learned about attachment theory in grad school, the professor showed me Harry Harlow's rhesus monkey experiment on attachment. You can YouTube it. It's okay. Pretty. But I was looking at that, and she was trying to explain this concept of attachment. Now, keep in mind, I had been a firefighter. I did undergrad business, MBA. Not a whole lot of psych. Not a whole lot of like human development kind of stuff.
You're like a spreadsheet and strength guy.
Yeah, just get shit done kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Feelings here. I was a very sensitive guy, but I was not connected with them. So anyhow, when I first saw about attachment, I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. What does this have to do with me? How is this going to help me with people and money? And it's been a long journey, because what happens when we start to really understand the power of our attachment style and our attachment history is it does cause us to become far more reflective on the implications of our family raising and upbringing and all the feelings that are associated with that, and the places where we were missed and not seen and not cared for. And that's a really challenging journey to go on, but it's one that's quite liberating. But what I like people to start thinking about is every time that you go to talk about money, you're also activating the attachment system.
Ooh, okay.
Right?
Say more.
So our attachment system is designed to help us maintain bondedness and connection with significant others in our life. And if we feel securely attached, then we feel confident in ourselves and confident in another person that we can go to them with the joys and celebrations of life, as well as the fears and challenges, and that will be received and cared for. And as we receive that, then we can turn back out into the world and go enjoy ourselves, do what we need to do, and come back in, right? So attachment's about being able to come in, get connection, be able to go back out, do what you need to do, back and forth, feeling confident that it will be there for you. Well, if you're anxiously attached, which is lower view of self, more positive view of others, typically you're people pleasers, right? They never really feel like they've done enough. And they're always going to be working harder to try to please the other person, and yet never feel like they've done it. And even if you have that partner that is validating and saying, no, you've been great, you've been wonderful, it just doesn't match that map in your brain. You almost can't hear it. So, whether it leads into compulsive working, or you feel your partner is not available, so you turn to shopping to soothe you, because shopping can have a relational component sometimes, right? Or you're anxious about bringing up your financial fears and anxieties because you don't want to be rejected, so you just hide what you're doing. Those are some big factors, especially on the anxious side of the attachment continuum. On the avoidance side, we know that they are more what's called instrumental.
Okay.
They're your facts and figures folks, typically. They're also the ones that want to keep people at an arm's length distance because I don't really trust that you can know or understand me.
Mm.
And I don't really trust that you can care or comfort for me. So I will just continue to take care of myself. Thank you very much. I'm not going to let you in. And money can become a source of pseudo security.
Yeah, totally. It's funny because when I'm doing like even enrollment conversations with women, right? Like they want my help, but their financial security. Someone told me at one point that they think about it, it's like their arm candy, right? Like their 401k, right? It like makes them, it's their date, right? It's what makes them feel safe and secure. And so when they're looking at like investing and working with someone, right? They're like, well, why? No way. Like I got to keep my security safe. That's like my date. Right. And so
my date with you, Marty. No way.
No way, right? Because because I don't want to take that risk. And so this, what you're saying is like makes so much sense because and they're usually people who are emotionally avoidant anyway. That's why they're not having success creating intimate relationships. So like, it's just really mind blowing to me is like, wow, like that's your problem. And that's how it's playing out because you're trying to control and that money control makes them feel safe from what you're saying.
That's exactly right. And I think one of the things that's so important for people to remember when it comes to attachment is, again, we didn't choose our attachment style. It was actually our way of attaching and bonding, whatever it happens to be, was highly adapted for the context we were raised in. The question is, as adults that are trying to form and maintain loving, safe, intimate relationships, those old patterns don't work and serve us oftentimes. And so we have to go on this deeper, harder journey of excavating and internalizing a new image or caregiving pattern in our relationship. And so, that's where your work is so fabulous to help people with that and the work that I do with attachment in couples. So
yeah, and if they don't do any of it, they're just going to end up like,
repeating,
loving on their 401k. It's funny. I got the saddest news yesterday that one of our clients passed away. She was like 60. I don't know. Maybe she was in her late 60s. I think I met her in her mid 60s. And I remember having that conversation because she'd like never had a relationship. And she was like, I'm at this age where like, I don't want to be working for the rest of my life. And it makes me really scared to like spend money on like love. I mean, like at this point. And I was just thinking like, so grateful that she was able to make that choice and do the work on her attachment style and make that investment because she ended up meeting this great man and they were together like for, the last 4 years of her life. And, I think that's what's really important to what you're doing is that it just really hits home for me is like when you're looking at what makes a loving, healthy relationship, like all this stuff, if it's not resolved, will just seep in and steal something that could be amazing and beautiful.
That's exactly right. And I think we're wired for bonding and connection as humans and as a part of the broader animal kingdom, right? We are wired for bonded and connectedness. That's our natural state. That's when we're healthiest and flourishing the most is when we have a stable sense of loving community and support. Now, I know we live in reality in the world that we have. And many of us don't get to experience that, especially through our childhood. And so it sets us on this life course. Ultimately, if we can wake up to it and recognize we need to return to that biological and psychological state of looking for and maintaining secure relationships and discovering what that really feels like. We talked, I think, just before the show started, but looking at people through all these different lenses. And this is the role that religion broadly has played for so many people is trying to help give them a sense of stability and connection, community, unconditional love. And so we need to also be able to look through that lens of psychology and say, well, maybe there's something here psychologically that's missing or lost that I can't fully transfer onto a spiritual object, that, there was something missing here. So I'm kind of.
No, but it's so profound because it's that whole, it's in the end, it all comes down to like that spiritual place, right? Which is like, we have to have this wholeness and this sense of self, right? Because otherwise all of these things can impact, and as I was saying, like, if you're making money, ladies, like, he has to have this much, he has to do that, he can't have this job, he can't do this, he has to do that, he can't have debt. If you're like, that can just be a whole other way that you are being picky rather than discerning. And my guess is, because I've seen it happen, and then, so let's say you find the guy like I did, like, oh, this guy's ambitious, he's got money. Didn't matter, right? Like, because then in the end, there's still the shit that ends up transmitting into your relationship. So let me ask you that. First of all, we could probably talk for like 10 hours. But so if you are like saying, you know what, this is really hitting home, like I need to clean up my relationship with money so that I can really make healthy, emotionally whole choices. What are some, like, what do you start to look at? What's the image? I know you have a bunch of like really good quizzes that we're going to put in the show notes that people can start to like assess, but what do you like, how do you start assessing where you are and the work that you need to do so that you can have a healthy relationship, whether you're single or in one?
Yeah. So one is just, have I even considered the concept that I have a relationship with money and I have a money history? If the answer is no, then okay, that's where we need to start. If the answer is yes, and I've been working on it for some time, then the next question is, who am I working with and what am I reading to help me work through that? Because the reality is you're not going to unearth your money story and get it resolved on your own. You will need some combination of new relationships with people that have taken the journey.
Yep.
So someone like yourself or myself, you'll need to be reading some combination of books and probably doing some YouTube, Google research, right? Like, so it's bibliotherapy and it's a real thing, right? Like that's why we have such a big self-help industry.
Right. Yeah.
And it's reading books helps you start making these connections, because one of the scientists that I really love following and therapists, his name's Dan Siegel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dan Siegel is fantastic. And he talks about a healthy brain is all about integrating and pulling together pieces and making sense. And so developing a healthy relationship with money is coming back to that financial empathy and curiosity places. Oh, this is related to that. Oh, that's related to this. And allowing space for that to continually happen and unfold and to move through all the different emotions that are associated with your particular set of connections. And it becomes a way of life to continually self-examine, if you will, versus self-criticize. Big difference.
Right. Which just sends you back up in the spot, you know, where you started, which is
in shame.
It's shame. Or adding to cart.
Yes. Click cart more. Click cart.
Click cart. Okay.
This one. This top. No. This top is the one.
I mean, how many people come to you and they're like, because my husband literally, he'll be like, oh my God, you think everything is about Amazon. I'm like, Amazon, why are you clicking on Amazon? It's like, he's like, look at what it is a month. Like, really? I don't know. I just always fixate on Amazon. Do other people fixate on Amazon charges? Is it just me?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's Amazon is the home shopping network our age, right? I mean, and this is like, you know, I'm a business person. And so I respect the industry of business and the need to sell.
Yeah, of course. And it is super convenient. So it has many positives. But if we're using our shopping and getting consumed and addicted into Amazon or wherever our shopping patterns take us, that's another problem where we're losing connection with ourselves and money and how much we're spending and whether we're on that path. I'm also not a fan of creating hypervigilant people around their finances. What is hypervigilance to you?
So it's constantly checking and monitoring your finances.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
All the time. You know, I was working with a couple recently and they described their money journey. They said, well, when we first started out, we tried to budget down to the penny.
Okay. Good for them.
You know, they quite say it, but I read between the lines, it was like, that didn't work. So then they went to the other end of the continuum where it's like, we don't even look. We just spend and kind of hope it. And it's like, okay, so let's find that middle zone where we have some awareness about what's going on and the general trend of our financial life, but we're not counting calories. We're not trying to get the exact ratio of carbs to fats to sugars to whatever. Like, who cares? if you're enjoying your life and it's in relative balance for you and you're making progress towards your financial goals, for the love of God, enjoy your life, please.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. Okay, last question. I know that you, I think, have said that the saver spender dilemma is the number one way that this money stuff shows up. So can this be cured? My friend who is a therapist, who's married to a therapist, told me the other day, and they've been married for 26 years. And she was like, when my husband buys shit, she's like, I viscerally in my body, she's like, I think I need EMDR. Like she's like, I don't think this is ever going to change. So can you reconcile? Can you heal? Can you find the middle ground if the spender saver dynamic is in your relationship?
Yes. And it's about resolving the financial trauma in the background.
I love it.
She's having an embodied experience around her husband's spending because it represents something threatening from her past. Right? I was working with a female client recently where she recalled growing up in relative poverty, being in the grocery store, her mom struggling to pay for all the groceries, and the fear and anxiety around that. She's now in her mid-40s, shopping for her family. She budgets. And even when she spends on target for her, overwhelming visceral panic. Right? So she's doing all the logically right things with money and still having this body response. So one of those first things that we do is bring hands to heart and stomach in that embodied threat and just acknowledge and say, we're safe now. This threat has passed now. It's over. We're secure. Right? We're trying to let our nervous system know that the threat has passed. Because it's not about a logical response anymore. It's about an embodied or remembered response.
I love that. I have a 10-year-old, I call it little who. I have a 10-year-old little who. When I was 10, my dad quit a family business that was in existence for like 125 years. So it was like, you're supposed to stay. And he came in and he was like, I quit the family business. I was 10 years old. I was watching Bewitched. I looked up in my little red carpet in the living room and I was like, are we going to be poor? And so that moment, right? Like I have to do that. Ed. I have to be like, you're okay. You're not 10, And I also realized, and my dad's passed away, but so I had this whole spiritual thing where I was like, his own fear about being poor, because he grew up in this super frugal family, probably energetically was like oozing into me as a little 10-year-old kid.
Yes.
Right? And I'm like, Dad, I want you to love me. So I'll just take some of that shit on, give it on for the rest of my life. And I had this spiritual experience. My dad was like, I didn't give it back. I'm in heaven. You don't need it. I'm sorry. Just give it away. You don't need it. But yeah, it's so intense. So I have to do that for myself.
Well, that's because, right, children are intuitive before they're cognitive. Right? They're wired, their nervous system is already well on board. It's developing and maturing, but it's there and it can read the felt sense of being held. Right? This comes right back through attachment theory, feeling of being bonded and connected. And I'm so glad to hear that you had that spiritual experience where your dad invited you to send it back to him, because I think that's the other thing is parents are, for the most part, not trying to instill financial anxiety, right? And many times in their good attempts, they're exacerbating financial anxiety out of their own fear and financial anxiety. They don't want their children to have the same problems, but they're energetically communicating something very different. And so, yes, I think as adults, there's a lot of room for forgiveness and grieving around our parents and the money dynamic we inherited from them.
Absolutely. I basically just told my whole money story. So thank you for listening. But I just really resonate because I've just seen it and I see it with my clients, and I just know that this is a really important topic. So ladies, links to Ed's programs, all about what he is doing in the world in the show notes. If you resonated with anything, which I know you did, don't lie to yourself. That's not for me. That's not true. Check it out. Ed, you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing the work that you do. And ladies, whatever you do, make sure you life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.